Hey guys, I'm Rick, and that is One Big Pile of Bricks with our amazing guest, Brickman.
Welcome.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Rick.
Anytime, how are you? How's things?
Awesome. How could it not be awesome? Because you're surrounded by Lego.
That's the right answer, right?
You're right here with us.
Yeah.
With Caroline, not necessarily Rick.
Yeah, well.
Because we've known each other, obviously, for a long time. Not many people believe that we know the mysterious Brickman because they're like, oh, you don't know him because he's famous.
Well, I knew you before you were cool. So
I was cool because I knew you.
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't work that way. It was definitely the other way.
Tell us, well, I'll sort of start you off. We kind of did get introduced to each other through Woody.
We did, yeah. So, I even have physical scars, thanks to Woody. So, was it your first store model?
So we purchased Woody before we had a store. It was like, I was like, I can buy it.
Pre-store.
Yeah, so This is when we first met. It was like 12 years ago.
This is the dangers of the internet. Rick saw this. Is he 6 feet tall?
Yeah.
The Woody statue from Toy Story, and Rick said to me, I want to buy that. I said, what are you going to do with that? And like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, we can just have it in our house. It'll be fine. So that's what ended up happening. But anyway, before all that happened, we were waiting for this Woody statue to come from Belgium.
I think it was Belgium.
And it sort of we're checking it on the radar. There it was on the ship, and then it disappeared for about 2 months. And we were very worried that something had happened to it. But anyway, one day, I think you were trying to figure out what had happened to it.
Yeah, so we get this email and it says damage. You'd know more because you ship a lot of Lego statues all around the world, so you understand these terms more than I do. Damage on skid. And I was like, I don't understand. What's a skid? Like, now we know, but back then I was like, oh. And like we get up to Caroline's parents and we get to like the docks and they're like, oh yeah, and typical like forklifts, there's like beep beep that beep 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 and like this is why it's damaged, like pulls it out and I'm just see these boxes like
it was inside a wooden a big wooden box, and there were 2 huge holes from what you told me, and
like the forklift must have went like
and you were just, oh my goodness, and my dad saying, no, it'll be all right. So anyway, what happened then?
Then I was like, we met 1 or 2 times through Brickvention, obviously, Melbourne's Lego event, a major Lego event anyway. Like, we met through there, and I was like, I think he can fix it. And I know we did, like, some emails, and back then the world was a lot smaller, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, I'll come it in. And then, we brought it to your house, and you're like, yeah, can you get me these, I think it's the orange ones, the dark orange in his hat? You're like, can you get these? Because I can't get these parts. I was like, I'll try. And then you end up fixing them, but in the process...
What happened?
Yeah, well, so a couple of things. We'll go back to the colour first. So the hat of Woody, the dark orange, at the time was super rare. Like I don't think it even came in some sets. I think they were like Lego Educational. That colour was like really...
I remember when it came out, it was like the biggest deal, like...
Yeah, it was like a big thing. And so Woody's hat was made out of that colour. So it was really hard to get that. And I could only get like 1x2 bricks or 1x4s. I couldn't even get like a 2x4.
Oh, wow.
In those colours. So it was really strange. So I think I had to call in some favours or something to get the original, that coloured bricks for the hats. So I think he kind of, I won't say he sat around for a while, but he kind of hung around, a bit like what he does for years. He hung around for a few weeks. And anyway, I finally got to doing the hat, and I was, chipping away because the forklift had pretty much, not only does it break bricks and physically damage bricks, but even on the corners of bricks, it'll round off the corners.
Yeah.
And so they're really noticeable, the way light hits Lego bricks and it reflects and stuff. So I actually had to pull a lot out, so hammer and chisel a whole heap out. And because of the shape of the hat, I had to get in all sorts of crazy angles and that kind of stuff. Anyway, I was I hopped up really quick and I banged the corner of my head under his hat, and I got a couple of stitches. So
it was quite memorable for you.
Very memorable, it certainly was. So I always look back at that Woody statue fondly, in a loving way. And so drew blood.
Wow. But you put a card in there as well, right? You still put cards in your models? Do you still do that?
Yeah, most of the time we do, where we put when we worked on it, or when it was days and dates and all of that kind of stuff.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a bit of a, if something ever happens to it, as a bit of a, we can kind of see where it comes from.
We've had a few, because we've obviously moved stores multiple times, and more than anybody, moving models, they like to move no matter how much glue and stuff. And I was like, we moved him in here. It was Caroline and I peak lockdown on it side by ourselves trying to get him in.
Well, let's explain to everyone how you actually move a Woody statue.
Oh, yeah. There's like a, there's like a plug in the middle, big metal rod goes in, and it's really awkward. It's like the most awkward Lego statue. You got to like carry him
You
sort
have
of like...
one person at the front holding this metal pole and one person at the back, and I'll be trying to lift it up because this model is so heavy I can't actually hold the pole to lift. I have to sort of have this heavy thick jumper on and then sort of lift it up like this, and I might get it this high off of the ground, and then that's it. We have to go a couple of meters, and then I'm like, no, let's stop. But yeah, it's quite a process.
Well,
to
he
move.
has a few, like, you know, the certain Lego colors after time, not so great. Like, so it was like changing his plug, and I pulled the plug out and it like shattered.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh. So I'm like trying to glue the parts, make it look like semi-normal, and so the light doesn't catch it. Because people are like, it's got a thing, and you're just like, I know, I can't do anything. It's reddish brown. It does that sometimes. Like, but you know, thankfully we've still got him. 12 years on, and he's in it. He's in a cabinet now because we've got to protect it, because if we want to clone you...
Well, it's now it's kind of like the real Woody from Toy Story, how he becomes a collector's item.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
You know,
that's-
that you've got to put him away and look after him, and yeah.
He's pretty
Have you written Rick on the bottom of his shoe, or have you...
No, it's got Andy there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's got the original Andy. I think the new one has. I think the new Woody. There's a new statue floating
Yes.
around. Has Bonnie. I think's the new
That's
girl.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've changed them a few bit. You know, like the designers obviously have to change the stance or whatever what Disney wants. And Lego bricks now, there's so many different types. You can change the shape of a model, make it look less blocky, more like round, like the eggs you created.
I mean,
Yeah, it's funny that that statue, that particular Woody, at that point in time in my career, I was doing a lot of repairs. As I won't call it a traineeship, but like an apprenticeship. That's one of the sorts of things you do. And what I did get to learn was I could pretty much tell... Sometimes I could tell the person who designed that model by the way it's designed or the internal structure that's happening in it, or if not, definitely 100% what country it was designed in. Because the way
That's
that the US model shop would design a model is very different to the Danish model shop versus the Czech Republic. So on the inside of a Lego model, as I say, sometimes I can tell the designer, but other times you can tell exactly which country that's come from based on certain techniques that they use or don't use. It's a bit like a Lego set. You know, you can tell a Jamie Berard Lego set when you're building it versus, somebody else.
Well,
so it kind of
maybe
happens.
you can. I can't.
Oh, you can sort of
can't,
tell, I
but-
think, the techniques too. And I think, and Eric, I'm assuming it was Eric. Eric, I think it's the one who designed it. He's still with Lego. He's an amazing builder with Lego USA. You see most of his work at most Comic-Cons now, if they still, when they're still on, they're still around. And I was emailing him recently. I'm like, do you still have like the original file? Because they have like a file that says, don't handle him this way. This is how you clean him. And he was like, why are you asking that for? I'm like, I'm just interested to see how much has changed from a new Lego statue to an old one. Because obviously the parts and the colours, so much has changed over the last 12 years, especially with Lego being how big it is.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me. And like, obviously in the last 12 years since we've known each other, we both have been relatively successful.
And you've had huge changes. I mean, think of the workshop that you were working in 12 years ago. Although it was lovely, but it was your garage.
My
wasn't
garage
it?
at home. Yeah, like all good things. Like Bill Gates started in his garage, so we did the same thing. Yeah, started at home. Well, even, the dining room table's probably that's the inception for most good Lego models.
Yeah.
And so it really was inside, and then the garage, and then
You got to get like, you start off small like everyone, but that was an amazing workshop.
It really was.
Well, you can never plan at the start as to what your thing's going to become. So you drag yourself along. So you start off by working on the kitchen table or whatever it is, and then you need more space. You go to the dining room table. Then all of a sudden you need a workshop or a shed or a garage, and you kind of drag yourself along. And that happens as you grow or your business develops.
I mean, it wasn't just a garage. You had this very expensive ventilation system, and you had all your parts were beautifully organized in these little white containers along the walls, and you had pallets full of Lego out the front in the driveway because there simply wasn't room.
That was the loading dock. Yep.
Yeah.
Was the driveway.
It was an amazing thing. I remember, I was fortunate enough where there was a period of time, it was the 50th anniversary of Lego, and I was fortunate enough, you put a call out and you said, hey, do you want to come give us a hand? And we were building those mosaics for the 50th year Lego. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. One of the guys we were building with was colorblind at the time.
Yeah, that was very funny.
No one
was so
knew.
funny.
He loved Lego so much, but he just didn't have the heart to tell anyone that he was colorblind. So
Because
what,
we were like,
what was happening?
I don't know what it was. I think it was the Skipping Girl one. There's a few good ones that you designed, and we were like, what's going on here? He's like, oh yeah, I'm colorblind. We're like, wait.
Why didn't you tell us that? But once we knew that, it was easy. And
It's easy because then you could guide him, right? You can like, this is black and this is white. Do those. But when it was like, and we're like, it's multicolored. It looked cool still, but like things have changed, obviously. You know, like colorblind it's easy to help those guys as soon as they open with you, but he just didn't tell us.
No, it's very funny.
Yeah. So with us, like the years we've known each other, you know, what's one of the most favorite models you've built us?
Look, it's funny when we first started, and it definitely wasn't here in your amazing new building, but it was probably the old store, and it was lots of little things, and it came about whereby, say, friends came about, and it was about making the animals or these. It'd be whenever something cool from Lego, you know, from Denmark would come out, and it's about like, oh yeah, how do we get that in the store or whatever the case happens to be. And so there's probably those things where we've done a little cat or puppy.
We've actually got. You can't see them here, but there's a cat still here. We've still got them upstairs, so they're just here.
We got a little white pussy cat, and we used to have our own cat called Millie. And one day we got home from the shop, and we had the little white pussycat model at home, and it was no longer where we had put it. It was on the floor, and quite a few pieces had come off of it. And we suspect our pussycat had very gently, over a period of time, pushed it or rubbed up against it, and the model had fallen onto the floor. And I think we went back to you at that point and got you to glue it back again.
We've had a few models that, you know, like the truck that we have downstairs in the cabinet. I remember picking it up. I'm all excited. We got this new truck. I'm like, this is awesome. It's got letters. We're moving it in the store, and I'm always like to all the staff. And back then we only had one staff member. I'm like, don't touch him. It's new. If you break it, I'm going to be annoyed because it's brand new. The first thing Caroline does, bang, knocks the exhaust pipe. Thump.
It was a tiny little piece. He's like, don't break it. I'm like,
the good news, it's Lego, you can rebuild.
That's exactly right. And I'm just like, but sometimes you knock them and you're like, where? Like the Triceratops we've knocked once, and we're like, I don't know where this goes.
There was a good reason that we accidentally knocked it. It was the tail that comes out slightly, only by about an inch or so, beyond the base. So you're looking at the base, but you don't realise as you're passing it that the tail comes out ever so slightly.
But it's cool. Like,
it's very cool.
I remember when we collected him. I was
what happened, Rick?
Her. It's her, and her name is Stomp because, you know, Sarah's kid's name.
So you went with Brett.
We went with Brett, and I remember we were negotiating or whatever, and like that's what you do when you order Lego statues. You know, you contact Lego Australia. There's a massive process. Then Ryan has to get approval. But anyway, we got approval, and I was like, "You're like, oh, it's a small one."
It's
I was
a
like,
baby
"Oh, cool,
one.
It's a baby one." I'm like, "Oh, cool." Like, you know, you're like, "It's a baby one."
Mind you, at this point, for the weeks and weeks that had preceded that, I did say to Rick, "So how big is this?" And he said, "Oh, it's a baby Triceratops." I said, "Okay," but that was the story the whole way through. Oh, it's a baby. Then, once he gets back, the first thing he said to me as he gets out of the truck, he says, you need to have a look at it. I said,
because, you know,
what's
like,
wrong? He goes, just
it's
have
a baby,
a look
but it's still a
dinosaur. Just look at the size of it. And I looked at it. I said, we're not going to fit that in. You have to take it back. And he's gone, oh, no, we can't take it back. We're keeping it. Because originally the plan was to have it.
To bring her upstairs. We're like, oh, we'll get her upstairs and like, put it in the podcast, you know, like, and like it's not getting up that staircase.
No.
Good luck with that. That corner around the staircase.
I know. We were like, like, do we crane it in? Like,
there was a couple of minutes at one point you did contemplate it, and I was like saying no.
You could probably do it if you took her off the base, I reckon.
Yeah, that's true. If you took her off the base, because I think the base is the bulk of the heaviness.
Yeah.
Like it's a metal base, obviously.
It'd be tricky.
Yeah, it would be.
Warranty doesn't cover staircases, by the way.
Well, that reminds me. I've got to contact you later because I always need more glue because I'm always like bumping stuff and knocking stuff off.
Yes.
Because, you know, I'm king of clumsy.
But I mean, now we have, instead of having the baby Triceratops.
That is a baby one.
We do have all the little
the
eggs
newborns.
here.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. We appreciate you building stuff for us, like always. We've had multiple conversations recently when we're moving the store around, trying to make it big. And Caroline's like, do we need any more statues? I was like, we don't, but it would be cool to have a Triceratops, like another one. And she's like, no. I was like, oh, or a T-Rex hanging off the wall or something.
But we've had to be very careful with even these little eggs because you don't realise just how sharp they are. And a few weeks ago, Dan, our cameraman, was reaching under the centre one.
Like, don't touch them.
Don't touch it, Dan. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. And he ended up getting scratched from the claws.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's a trick. And the worst Lego injury I've ever heard of is a master builder, a guy, Chris Steiniger.
Oh, yeah.
You've probably met Chris in a few places. So he was working a Lego model at the Lego headquarters in the US. And he basically, his foot went past the Lego model, and it sliced the whole side of his foot open.
Horrendous.
Yeah,
I
like
can-
through the shoe that he had on, and it basically and he had like 17 stitches or something on the side of his foot.
Wow.
That's the worst one I've ever heard.
I
of.
think we had this, well, at one point we did have a rock monster, which we no longer have, but this particular one grazed my leg. I had shorts on and I brushed past it in one of our stores. There wasn't terribly much room and I ended up getting scarred, and I think I didn't get scarred, but it bled and bled. I think you ended up with some scars.
Yeah,
at one point.
unfortunately, me being king of the clumsy, I'm always falling on something or on a statue. That's why most of them are protected. It's not from the general public. It's from me, me falling onto it and like giving myself some weird injury because I'm awkward as.
That's pretty funny.
It's it's one of the, would you say, dangers of the being around me, Caroline? I'm falling over all the time.
Accident prone.
Well, Lego in the US, they have obviously a pretty big work site with a few thousand employees.
Yeah.
So they have like basketball courts and squash courts and all that kind of stuff. And one of their big, better model builders playing basketball, like totally mangled his leg and stuff like that. So I've seen a few Lego injuries, although that's not a Lego injury per se, but at Lego injury.
Because a lot of people don't realize the Lego US office is an old factory as well, because they used to produce Lego
Correct.
there. Yeah, now obviously Mexico, but I was lucky enough to go one year and I was like, this place is like huge. Like,
Well,
Enfield,
ironically,
isn't it?
yeah, Enfield,
Enfield, yes.
and literally a mile away is Hasbro's headquarters.
really?
Yeah, so there's a really funny story. So Lego have their big thing in Enfield, and the predominant reason that they went to Enfield was back in the 60s and 70s. There was Connecticut, the state that's in, had a big government incentive to set up. Businesses get set up in those states, and they get a rebate or tax incentives. So there was Lego set up their facility. There is a medium security federal prison. And then there's Hasbro.
I was there one day when it went into lockdown.
Oh, because of the prison?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the one time I was visiting an old employee who unfortunately is no longer with the company, Kevin. I went over and, Kevin and Tim Courtney, I was just, having lunch and they're like, oh, we need to... I'm like, why? He's like, oh, someone's, out of the prison. I'm like, wait, what's happening now?
Yeah.
So, the whole facility goes into lockdown. They're like, you got to stay.
Yeah,
And I think
so
I left
just-
later, so,
So just on the other side of the prison is Hasbro's big headquarters. So, yeah, crazy.
Wow, that's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And with, obviously, the changes of Lego and how, we're fortunate enough because of people like you. Lego Masters has been such a big deal for not only our business, but for Lego. Lego Masters Australia is probably the best run of the show. It's the one that's left some sort of mark on the
Lasting
map.
impression.
And, a big thing for us is to say thanks because, without people like you and Hamish making the show what it is, we wouldn't be as successful as we are today.
Well, that's the contestants. The contestants are the ones that show the talent. They're the ones that actually perform. We're kind of the ringleaders of the circus, if you like, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
But they're the ones that really to do it all. And what they do is they show off the creativity. They're the ones that we put through their paces and really test them and stuff like that. So I think your thank yous are probably aimed elsewhere. We're facilitators. If you like.
I think
that's
it's one of
true.
those things. I think Lego's grown so much over the years. Obviously, all of us have
Seen so many
changes, especially because of the Lego movie, the original one. That's done wonders for the brand and not only our business and most likely your business as well, because there's a lot more Lego stores now. People like me who has a buying addiction of buying Lego statues,
No.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you could probably do a whole podcast topic on, I'll call them veteran AFOLs or people that have, adult fans of Lego that have been around a while, pre-Lego movie type stuff.
Yeah.
And I won't say Lego wasn't cool then. I think that's probably too strong. But Lego definitely wasn't as cool as what it is now and wasn't as popular as what it is now. And kind of how that has changed significantly.
Yep.
And the amount of AFOLs has changed.
Yeah,
and
it's
also,
huge.
And also, I won't say the acceptance of AFOLs, but certainly like when I first started being an AFOL, if I was caught in the toy aisle, I'd be like, "Oh, this is for an imaginary
Or
cousin or something."
collectible
that I was-
minifigs back in the day. Series
or-
one where we're
or
like,
whatever,
minifigs.
So I think that's changed a lot, and things like Lego Masters and the Lego Movie certainly are that they're responsible for that, for taking it mainstream, for lack of a better term.
I remember the days of us. There's a Melbourne Lego youth group. They call themselves Mugs, and we were members. Originally, we met through there, and back then we used to meet in Gumnut House. You remember that little office we all used to meet up?
Yeah.
Back in the day, with I wouldn't say original people, but the people who were around at the start. It just always fascinates me how many people that I didn't know that like Lego that now, because of everything that's gone on in the last couple of years, the world has sort of brought out a lot more creativity and looking for something, you know, like Everyone Is Awesome, looking for something that brings them into the brand. Like, it blows me away how incredibly lucky we are now, because when we first started, we never thought, you know, 12 years in that we're still doing it. Like, I was like, oh, if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, like, you know, what do? You know, that's business, right? But with the big influx of the AFOLs and Lego Masters, how have you found being, you know, effectively the number one judge in Australia on the number one show? Effectively, it produces big numbers. Like,
yeah, look, it's interesting, and it's funny. I got asked a question the other day of how come our show only has, our version of Lego Masters only has one judge versus other versions of Lego Masters that have multiple judges, and there's a few reasons for it. I think predominantly the reason that it works, well, I think it works anyway, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because it's related to the show, but we only have so much airtime. We only have 48 minutes, and Lego Masters Australia, we are serial run over timers. We are sorry about that to all the kids and everyone, but we always run over time. And so for me to give effective counsel and criticism and judging and positivity and all of those things, if you add another judge to that, that time is taken out of that almost immediately, out of what I would have to say. And you wouldn't get the full feedback, or you wouldn't get the full feel for it. And so we found, at least, particularly, and Fenella from Denmark, who came out for the first series.
Fenella's actually a really nice person.
She's amazing. She's amazing, incredible Lego builder, and a very talented woman, and a lovely person as well. But we even struggled with that just in one episode. And so then the decision almost became a technical reason as to why. And then having the privilege of watching the other overseas shows, I'm really in tune with watching that battle where I know they've got more to say, and I know they've got a lot more to give, and I know that what they're saying is wrong, but I'm not seeing all of that, and that's one of the reasons as to why.
Yeah, but I think too, the reason ours is so successful is that when it first exploded, you know, Matthew Ashton, who's obviously the creator of Lego minifigures, or the line, I should say, and worked on Everyone Is Awesome, he was in the UK show, and that was the first one, and I don't think that was as popular because I feel like they didn't have that aspect of someone who has to build big displays for a living, because that's your job. And it's very hard to build a display that's going to entertain people and keep it in the brief. Like, it's a big deal, right?
Well, what I would say is, and it's interesting, I get asked a lot, have I ever designed a Lego set? And the answer is no, I haven't. I mean, some tiny little things, sure, but nothing, because it's a different art. It's a different skill. It's a very different type of project. Having to put yourself in the mind of a child for a Lego set, having to design a Lego set with all the constraints that they have, it is a significant art form, and takes years and years of training to master and to do. And so having someone that perhaps that is their focus, does that necessarily equate to what if you're making a huge diorama?
Well, yeah, that's correct.
So there's insane. I mean, the physical Lego skills, of course they are, and they're, you know, all of those. There's a lot of translatable skills out of the two, but they're very different to each other. And so when having Fenella on board was great, because she understood it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm working at it from a very different perspective.
Well, I think too, you know, like as we've seen with the US season, I haven't finished series 2. I know it's a bad thing. Like, it's hard for me to like retain my attention. But you can see that the battle between Jamie and Amy trying to get both their inputs without coming across. It's really hard for the viewers at home to understand that you can come across as arrogant without being arrogant, because you're giving them general feedback. But when you're not in the moment and you can't see people close to close, you don't understand the feeling in the moment of the time. And you can sort of notice it on Lego Masters US. It's really hard for them to balance Jamie and Amy together, because one, they're both strong personalities, obviously, because they're head Lego designers. But it always fascinates me that the US still has time to have two, and they're trying to keep the two model, which is great because they're both great people. But I feel like our season is perfect because, you know, like you've said before, the teams are like the stars of the show. I feel like if there was two judges, you'd be taking up half the episode, and then it makes it kind of hard.
Well, I'd challenge that even, and to take it a bit further. And probably the greatest feedback that we get from people that watch Lego Masters, just show more of the builds and more of the contestants.
Oh wow!
And so that's the key number one. And then there's obviously the hosts. So Hamish and Will Arnett, for example's sake, and so their airtime as well, because they're funny people, and they're, you know. So there's not only that, then there's the feedback, there's the judging process, there's the reactions, there's the drama points. There's a lot that has to happen in that time period, and so when you've got someone as dominant as, say, Will Arnett, for example, he's even taking up time from the contestants and the teams. And the US version, they're not allowed to run 1 second over.
Wow.
So they've got some real time crunch. I'd hate to be an editor on that show.
That's why they're so fast. Oh, and then we're going to do this, and then we're cutting to this, and then
it's really bang, bang, bang. And, as someone that perhaps, understands the Lego Masters world a little bit, I would honestly love to see a full feedback, because I know Jamie and Amy are brilliant people.
Yeah.
And I know they're lovely people, and I know they're nice, and I know they're compassionate about what they're saying. We don't get the opportunity sometimes to see that. Not all the time anyway.
Yeah.
We get glimpses of it and we get hints of it here and there, but I know it's there, but it doesn't come across sometimes because they've had to.
Well, and it's a big thing, US time slots. It's money, right? It's all about money and ad revenue and time and trying to sort of scale it down. But it's still performing well. And obviously, Australia performs exceptionally well because, Hamish is a funny guy. Hamish is actually a nice guy. That's the number one question we get always asked. He's like, is Hamish nice? I'm like, he orders Lego from us. He's like, wait. I'm like, yeah, he does. He's a nice dude. He's not just putting it on.
He has a very funny message at the end of his email. It was something
you must
like...
burn.
Every time I get an email from him, I'm just like...
It was something like, if you get... You'd perhaps remember it more than me, but if you've received this email in error, please burn, destroy...
It's quite funny. And he's a nice guy. He obviously he's in Sydney now, and, when you're emailing and stuff, and it's kind of hard not to be weird when he's like the host of a show that kind of makes you money, so you try to be that line of like, hey man, do you need me to do this? Like, you try not to overstep the boundary.
He just ordered like everyone else, put his order in, and we looked at the address and we thought, okay, so that's a little bit odd. How many Hamish Blakes would there be in Melbourne?
Yeah, it was a really weird thing.
And then it was a home address, and we went, that's
so I emailed him like, are you
strange.
sure you want me to send it to your house? Because everywhere you take, posters like,
or
Hamish Blake, and you're like, don't, just
send it.
So with, obviously, you've helped Hamish a few times with, food challenges for his son and creating weird things for birthday cakes and all sort of crazy contraptions. How have you found your friendship grown over the show? Did you expect it to be a friendship, or...?
Well, it's funny. When Lego Masters first came out, and the concept was, I'd been working a lot with the producers of the show, very much from a technical perspective.
Yeah.
How is this going to work? What does it look like? How does the show, all of those kind of things. And the concept of the host or the person that's running the show, because we're basically taking Lego Masters UK but changing it entirely.
Yeah.
The similarity is there are teams and it's Lego. That's pretty much as far as it goes. And so the concept of having, okay, there's going to be a host for the show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, sure. Who's the host? That's like the number one question. Like, well, what we want to do is obviously we need to make sure there's some gel between you. You obviously need to be able to get along.
Yeah,
well
obviously,
together, that's really important. So let's have lunch.
Wow.
And so we went to lunch, and I didn't know who it was.
Wow.
It was going to be part of our thing we didn't know.
That's fair.
Hamish obviously knew about me, and there's a guy that knows Lego, but that was about all he knew.
Yeah.
And so we just had lunch, and we're into lots of things similar to what we do.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was easy. It was, we obviously didn't start off as mates. So you start off as co-workers, and it kind of evolves. But eventually that became more and more and more and more and more. And so the similarities that we have are transcended across, sports are very similar.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of things that
because he's a big AFL supporter like you are.
Yeah, and cricket and, and fitness and cycling and all the things that we so we have a lot together. And I mean, his kids are a little bit younger than what our kids are, but there's still that whole similarity and feeling between the two. So very lucky that we have that chemistry together.
You guys, as anyone who watches the show would know, and we've been fortunate enough, we went to a finale taping.
We did.
The chemistry is not fake. I think people try to think that they don't really know each other, but we can say that, we've seen you guys interact. And, at one finale, season 2, I think it was, Caroline, we met Hamish for the first time actually in flesh. And he was like a nice guy. I was like, he's like, hey, Rick. I was like, oh, hey, man. Like, you don't expect that,
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to speak to him, and so it was like, hey, how you going? But, he still acknowledged that we were there. It was great.
It was really, really nice.
He's a very genuine man.
Yeah, he's actually really nice. I think that's what people need to understand, that what you see on TV is generally you and him. Like, the emotion behind you, everything is, real. Because people go, does Brickman cry on cue? Like, He's not crying now, so obviously it doesn't
I've
work.
seen your prices, Rick. I'll be honest. It's probably-
Me and you know that's a lie. Not me and you know.
I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, and you know, it's funny having someone supportive like Hamish, and he's very genuine. And here's the thing: the guy's a television guru, right? He's
massive in television
He's
circuits.
been around. He knows. He understands all that stuff. I don't know any of that.
Yeah.
And what he said to me was, and he goes, mate, I don't have a clue about Lego. I've built some Lego.
Yeah.
Anything to do with the Lego, you teach me.
Yes.
And likewise, the television side of things. This is how TV works. This is how all of this rolls. And so he acted as my teacher there and vice versa. So that kind of, I won't say put us both at a disadvantage, but it kind of leveled the playing field from a certain degree. And even I remember before filming of Lego Masters started, we were in the studio doing rehearsals for a day. And I'm like, this is just bizarre. And he just said us a few things, you know, just like, no, don't worry about that. This will go in a cinch. This will easy. Because we're an unscripted show. We don't do scripts.
Wow, that's amazing.
So he's like, don't worry about it. This is how it'll flow. This is how it'll work. And if it doesn't work, we'll do it again. And this is, you know, and so as a tutor, as someone to help me with that process, it just disarmed the situation. And then likewise, when I had, you know, he says to me, Ryan, tell me about this Lego, and you know, I would get into my thing about what Lego can do and how particular elements do what or whatever. He was the same as what I was, so it really just flowed.
Yeah.
So going on the show, going from the AFOL standpoint, obviously, like, I know it's hard, but in the AFOL community, you're a big deal, right? Because you are the Brickman. You're the guy that's like
has made it
in the Lego community. Like,
you're the one who has taken your passion and you've made it into a profession,
like a massive profession, right? So how does it feel stepping into Lego Masters, not really doing interviews? Because back then it wasn't a thing. Us being like, you know, even now I get approached. Do you want to talk about this thing? I'm like, oh, okay. It's kind of weird. But how did you find it? Like going from the building statues to being this media personality effectively overnight?
Look, there's a couple of parts to your question. The first bit is, so as an AFOL, and us AFOLs that have been around for a while, we've known how awesome Lego is, right?
Oh, obviously.
That's why we're AFOL. So we've publicly admitted to the world that we're into Lego.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's why we were AFOLs. And that was a thing. And obviously, Lego Movie, Lego Masters or whatever has now opened that up, that it's now okay for everybody else who has had a passing Lego.
That's right.
It's okay, you're one of
okay.
us. And it's safe. So as an AFOL from in that previous bucket, if you like, that was into it then, what that then does is kind of transcends that we've had years of experience of this thing being an AFOL, and so it makes it easy to talk about because we know all of the things about Lego and what it can do and how it can work. So it actually made the transition to doing it professionally relatively easy because we've been doing it for so long. And that's no different to just because I'm doing that publicly. All AFOLs who have been into it for a period of time have gotten more comfortable with the Lego bricks. They know what it can do. They know what it can't do. Their models have changed. They get bigger. They get better, etc., etc. So it's I won't say it's a natural extension, but it's an extension.
I think you're doing exceptionally well for like, because, you know, we all obviously known each other for a long time. And when they were announcing Lego Masters, we were all like, how are they going to make a show about Lego? Because we never saw the UK one. So we were like, that's an interesting concept. That's a bit weird. No one knew what it was going to be about. No one knew. Like, how can you make a show about Lego? Because we're all like, that's a bit odd. Like, but obviously once it, you know, premiered.
From that first episode, we were on the edge of our seats. We were yelling at the TV. And I think, you know, in the days that followed after each episode was aired, I would go to school and I would have kids running up to me and we would just be going back and forth discussing the episode. And there was a lot of, even the other staff members were yelling at me, did you see the episode? Yes, and this happened and this happened. And, oh, you know what happened with that? And I'd know a few of the little behind the scenes details. So I'd kind of fill them in on what happened at what point and what they cut out and all this sort of stuff. But people were so excited about it.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing to taking. I mean, it's a reality show.
Yeah, that is. That's what you kind of forget sometimes, right?
So there's this whole component of there's a special secret sauce, a big cauldron of boiling water that is reality television, and there are people that understand that, and we're very fortunate with Lego Masters to have the best possible people that are working on that soup. And then obviously we Hamish is able to do what he does. I'm able to do what I do. The contestants are able to do what they do. So that's what's made it, we feel at least, to be what it's become.
And because like Lego Masters is effectively your baby, do you have favourite children in the Lego Masters?
I don't know. It's not my baby. But what I will say, I don't work for Lego, right? I'm my own, just like you guys. You're not a Lego store.
Nope.
You're your own individual business.
Yep.
Likewise, I'm the same. And we have to remember that Lego Masters isn't an ad for Lego.
Yeah, that's the hardest part,
But it
right?
is the best ad for Lego.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's
right.
the whole thing. So when I'm giving feedback or talking about Lego bricks or talking about what the contestants have made or what missed opportunities they have, whatever it happens to be, that's not because Lego has dictated that is right or that is wrong. It's about, hey, that's just the way that I feel.
Yeah.
And that to get back to your point is, people at home have different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they should have won. I think that's awesome. That is totally unreal. And that's okay because that's what Lego is. 6 Lego bricks go together 915 million different ways, right? So
And
imagine what 3 million bricks in the brick pit can go.
Yeah.
generating discussion. That's exactly what you want with a TV show. You want people to connect and talk to each other and, no, I think this should have happened, this person should have won and all the rest of it. You do want that social interaction on the other end.
That's a key part of that reality soup.
Yeah.
That's a key part of that. That's really important.
I find it very interesting that over the years, obviously, you've liked to collect Lego Masters over your time. Every season, you've seemed to hire a Lego Master throughout the season. And what's that been like as an experience, taking them from a contestant to like one of your employees?
Well, look, it's really interesting. So from series 1, Miller and Geordie came on board. Miller was only with us for a short period of time. Good poor guy didn't have a car, so I couldn't really.
And like it's hard when you're living distance and stuff like that.
Yeah, so he was only with us for a very short period of time. But Geordie sort of came on board more as just a need. We had so much work on, we needed to get stuff done, and so he was kind of before his uni, kind of in a bit of a gap year, and said, hey, so he came on board. And then nothing happened with Series 2. We didn't bring anyone on board. Obviously, it's very difficult. A lot of contestants are interstate.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for them to move. But for Series 3, so I got a call from Gus about a week after we finished filming. And unfortunately, obviously COVID, his job had evaporated. And so the poor guy was out of work. And he rang me and just said, hey, look, no pressure. Have you got anything? And I kind of didn't. Yeah. But I'd seen what he was capable of doing and how he was doing, and he's an engineer by trade, mechanical engineer. So I said, well, come on board and we'll kind of go for it. So Gus is now part of the team as well.
It's amazing that you've managed to bring people in that, like we're all trying to help each other during a time of what it is right now, It's a new world. It's going to be like this for a long time. I find it amazing that he gave you a call and you're like, hey, let's give it a shot. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, look, and it's funny. Each one of the team, the Brickman team, they're all unique. They all have their own skills. They all bring something to the table. And it's really important that we capture that and we use that and utilize that in the right way. Yeah. And having a mechanical engineer, I personally, one of my things that I've wanted to do over the years is to push the boundaries of what a Lego brick can do.
Yeah.
And so mechanical engineers are important in us doing that. And so the future projects and things like, our Jurassic World show.
Which is amazing.
Some of those dinosaurs defy what Lego bricks are capable of doing and never been done before. So we need to keep doing that. We need, if the next show and the next show and the next show, whatever they happen to be, we'll push the boundaries of all that stuff.
What was it like setting up Jurassic World as a show? Like, I feel like dealing with so many different companies to get it all in one spot, to agree to build a show out of Lego, it's not easy.
No, and it's funny. It's like film production. You watch the credits and there's like 3,000 people involved in film production, right?
Yes.
And it's a big thing. So it's the same sort of thing. There's a lot of people involved, whether it's the IP holders or the licensing company or the film studios. There's so many different people involved and they've all been responsible for their various little parts of it. But there's probably 5 or 6 key people. The thing that helped us the most with Jurassic was we did the DeLorean.
Yeah, it's
in
amazing.
The previous show, the one that actually
So
smokes
good.
up.
Yes.
And I'd actually worked with Universal on getting the rights for that and how we did
Wow.
that. And also through Amblin, who also do Jurassic. And so we'd made contact with the right people at Amblin. And of course, once we'd done a smaller project, it wasn't that small, but once we'd done a smaller project with them, we'd formed that relationship and they knew that we were okay and we could, that kind of opened the doors. And so then when it came down to say, okay, let's start something way cool, how about Jurassic the doors were open and we knew the right people to contact.
It was it's a massive show. It's a big deal. I love dinosaurs, as you would be aware.
You loved it.
I'm obsessed.
Caroline, look at the dinosaur. Look at it. And then we got to the Jurassic Park gates and he's like,
oh my God.
If I could have those gates, if I could put them somewhere, I would love to put them somewhere.
We've been having all these
They're only
conversations.
5 meters high.
Back up.
Caroline's like, we only have so much space. We do need to sell product, not display for Brickman.
Of course, yeah.
Every big dinosaur. Look at it.
It's just amazing.
You're not looking at it properly. Look at it. You have to appreciate it. Don't do that. You say, oh, yes, very good, Rick. No, look at it.
I appreciate it because from a AFOL standpoint,
Yes.
for what you've done with like the T-Rex and the Jeep, like that blows me away that you've managed to build we've seen T-Rexes built before by other LCPs like skeletons and stuff, but to build effectively half a dinosaur that's attached to a wall without it falling down is a big feat.
Yeah, and they're the sorts of things that why you need the right people with the right skills to come in and to help you do that. If you're going to put 1.5 tons of Lego, which is what that T-Rex
Wow,
weighs,
that's amazing.
sticking out of a wall, 5.5 meters in the air, on top of people. You need to
Yes.
make, you need to
It's
make
above,
sure,
right?
Totally, you've got to make sure, there's a lot of safety and rules and regulations and compliance and there's a million things like that. So
Wow.
it's really important that we have the right people to do that.
It's pretty cool. I've always said to Caroline, can we get a T-Rex? And she's like, no, Ryan doesn't need any more. Stop spending money with Ryan.
We only have certain amount of space. Little ones like this, perfect. They
can
can be
move
moved around. That's right. Once we get a baby Triceratops, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge.
Plus, we have so many other things. We're fortunate enough over the time we've purchased a lot of items. We've got Christmas trees, hot dog man.
I can see seagull in the background.
Seagulls over there. There's been so many things we've purchased along the time, which we're fortunate enough we can do that. But I think a big part of it is that with the way Lego Masters has grown and the way Brickman's grown, I'm grateful that we still chat because I know it's hard and in the world that we're in, it's easy for people to try and take advantage of, the friendship because you're famous now, Ryan. So it's
I'm not
Lego
famous, but that's
famous.
okay.
But you know what I mean? To me, it's a big deal that, you still take the time because we've known each other for such a long time and, you've been around when I got really sick and I'm fortunate enough that you reached out to me because I'm very open that I went through a dark patch and it was very hard for me and you were one of the people that were like, hey, are you okay? And not many people would reach out to me and I was like, man, you don't understand how much I appreciate it. I'm grateful
Oh, you're welcome.
that you reach out for us. And, Caroline and I always talk about the times that, Brickman was in the small facility and now obviously you're doing so well, which you've earned that.
As my crack dealer, my plastic crack dealer.
Yes.
And look, I think the thing is, and it's a bit more than just us as people, but when you share a common something with someone, like us AFOLs all do, we love Lego, and that's our common bond. And, it's important that people look after each other and to do that through Lego or just as good people, I think is really important. And you don't want to forget that.
That's right. And you never want to forget where you've come from either. And we're all aware of where we all came from. We started in a very small shop or even before that, we started even just
doing shows.
Just doing little shows with one table and that was
I think
the
our
start.
first show meeting it was the Love Boat show at Brickman.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
It was.
And you had it signed, and I think you had it signed back then, or was it going overseas?
Yeah.
But things have changed in that such a long period. But where you've come from and where the team is now, it's such a big deal. I think no one understands how hard the journey's been for you as a Brickman, the Brickman team, to go from small scale to such big scale models, working with Lego Masters, building massive displays like the recent season of Lego Masters, which was Bricksmas. The Christmas tree is massive. It's not a tiny model.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Television distorts people's perspective of things in a few different ways, but you become an overnight success over the period of 14 years, right?
Yeah.
That's and it's the same with all these big models. They take months and months, sometimes years to put together, and they get 3 minutes of airtime on television. And it's the same sort of thing, in your own business that the two of you have run for such a long period of time. How you started small. You didn't become Rick James Bricks in a month.
It's very interesting.
Since Lego Masters
That's right.
came on, you started early. And it's exactly the same thing with me.
So people can't say, well, if people say, oh, Brickman, you're so lucky, you think, gee, well, it took a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication to get to where you are now.
You do, and there is an element of luck. I'll admit that, but that's an element.
That's right.
It's not the be all
Well, and a
and
big
end all of it.
thing
It's,
too is when
it's a key. It's a part
Yeah.
of it.
I think
Yeah.
a big deal is when you work hard, you create your own luck, and you've worked hard. You've worked a long time. You've done the hard yards. We all have growing our businesses, getting to where they are today, and we're thankful. And you are as well, that we have great teams that surround us that be able to keep us going.
Definitely, that's a key thing. And I remember when I first started, and I would do bar mitzvahs, I'd do rich kids' birthdays, I'd do all of those kind of. I did because that's what you had to do to earn a crust, right? And so that's where you start, and you've got to remember that that's where you come from. So,
I think that my most vivid memory, I think, visiting you, dropping off Lego or collecting something that I brought. I'm like, what are you building? And you had this rocket like in your little studio, which is not as big as this.
No.
You're like building it on the side. I'm like, how are you building a rocket on, like, you know, a normal person's brain's like, what's he doing? Like, and then when I saw 12 meters or something, it's quite high. It's a massive rocket. I was like,
And you had dry ice coming out from the bottom of it at one event. Yes.
and I was like, how's he going to build it on his site? Like,
well, here's the thing, and I can let you in a little scoop here. It's a little bit of secret. There's a lot of trial and error in that stuff, right? And I remember I think it was a plane because I'm into planes.
yeah.
And it wouldn't fit out the door. Like rookie mistake, right? So you learn from those things.
Imagine building it and then getting, because I remember those like,
and
old
like
school
rip the
doors.
wing off, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So-
it'll fit. And you won't
So
fit.
by all
No,
means,
it's gonna fit.
that's trial and error. It's a rite of passage almost,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And with the journey, it's not a journey, the success that you've had, how have you found filming the newer seasons to Lego Masters with the world that it is now compared to like the first couple of seasons?
Yeah, well, you mentioned on something before, and I was speaking to a fellow AFOL about this earlier today. You said that about being famous. So I'm only famous in a context, in a Lego context.
Yeah.
So if I walk down the street, nobody would have a clue who I am.
Yeah.
Right? So, but if I'm at a Lego event, absolutely, because it's in context.
That's
So
right.
there's many different levels of famous, and so this is pretty low on the spectrum. Let's be honest, it's pretty way down there on the spectrum.
Rick always calls himself a famous poor person, don't you?
Oh, because it's different, right? When like the Brickman has a big social media presence. Lego's
Yes.
grown. We have a decent sized one. When kids are like, what's it like being famous? I'm like, what are you like? No, I'm just an idiot dancing on TikTok like every other fool,
Yeah.
right? Like,
So it's all relative to that.
Yeah.
So has it opened any doors? Well, it has,
Yeah.
definitely. It has opened doors in that all of a sudden people think Lego is more relevant to what they want to do. So it's opened doors in that perspective. Has it opened doors to, do I get to hang out with Brad Pitt? No, that's not.
I'm sorry.
you
I know it's a name of yours, but that's fine.
No, but that's so it's all relative, I guess.
Yes.
When we talk about being famous, it's relative.
Well,
it's,
it
it's
is
kind of
too.
how
True.
how I perceive it. Anyway, so to come back to your question of how has that changed, so obviously COVID has probably the biggest impact of everything that's happened to everybody, and filming Lego Masters is very different now. It takes longer to do things. There's obviously a lot more protocols. We're all in bubbles. There's a whole heap of things that have changed because of that, and so it's technically more challenging, and that's eaten up the advances that we would have made in getting better at it.
Yeah.
So instead of just getting better at it and getting sharper and better and faster and all of those kind of things that you would do, that advantage has been eaten away by what's happened with the world that we live in now.
Well, and does that mean filming takes a lot longer than normal?
It's pretty much the same.
Yep.
If anything, it's maybe a slight bit longer, but it's pretty much the same. But if it wasn't for that, we would certainly be faster and sharper and things like that. Things like, when I Series 1,
Yeah.
it might have taken 3 takes to do something. Nowadays, we'd probably do that in 1 take. But that time is taken up because all of a sudden we've got a distance, we've got to clean this, or we've got to do that.
Yeah.
Or, so you win, you lose.
Well,
You
and
lose, you
filming
win.
such a massive show, so much production team, you guys have been done really well. There's been no COVID scares. You guys have been 100% COVID safe. Like,
We have had. I mean,
Wow.
in the Christmas special, Whipper, of course, was
yes.
a
yeah,
was a
unfortunate.
close contact. So we've been pinged a couple of times.
Yeah.
And in the third series, we were filming in Melbourne right in the height of lockdown. We actually delayed filming by 2 to 3 months. It was before we were meant to start.
Yeah.
And what that does is that because it's still got to air on a certain date, the editing team they were super compressed.
Wow.
In terms of their editing, and so swings and roundabouts. Whilst we say we weren't affected, we were, and vice versa.
And how did you go filming Bricksmas? I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, obviously Michael won with Brooke. Like it was a great, not a filler. See, I don't know what to describe. It was great to have Lego Masters content before Christmas. Like I enjoyed it. How did you find the process of filming a Christmas special, which would have been obviously a lot earlier than Christmas?
Yeah, it was September.
Oh wow!
So early September. So I wasn't quite in the Christmas spirit yet. I didn't have the Santa hat on at that stage, but. Because we kind of planned for it a little bit, we were all sort of in that mood. I was really nervous about these celebrities that came on board.
Yeah.
Are they going to be into it? Are they not going to be into it? Are they what's it going to be like? Because, you often see these shows where it's like, wow, they were a waste of time.
Yes.
But we were so lucky in that all four were so into it.
Oh,
and that made the show so much more enjoyable. It made it go really quick and it was like a normal episode.
Yes, oh, good.
And they all bought in. And that was the most important thing, that they all were so into it. Yeah. And even like Brooke, for example's sake, she'd hardly touched a Lego brick in her life, and she kind of discovered that she was an AFOL.
Oh,
so
it was really good. I was actually like, wow, Brooke and Bill. Because, and celebrities is a loose term, it's always thrown around for people that are big on social media or whatever. But I was like, when they announced who they were on there, I was like, Sophie Monk, really? Like, you sort of like, my brain was like, what's happening?
Great, yeah.
But, like, they all seemed to get along. Unfortunately, Whipper had to leave, but, it didn't portray on camera that he was eager to actually build anyway.
It was very funny. yeah.
But I was blown away by Brooke's skills. Straight away, I was like, oh, wow. And I've been fortunate enough, I've chatted to Michael about it. And he was like, yeah, it was really, really good to have somebody that could just zero in and just be like, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Well, because they're professionals, aren't they? They're told, they're given the brief. Yep, let's do this. Off we go.
Yeah, and likewise. And Scotty Cam, for example, he treated it like it was a job site.
Yes.
It was on, mate. It's like, right, we're going to get this done, we're going to get this done, we're going to get this done.
But you've worked with him before on the block. Like, that would have been like seeing an old friend, effectively.
And, he was no different.
Wow.
Scotty Cam is Scotty Cam. He's not an actor. He's Scotty Cam.
And there's it was good there's no drama. Like, it's easy to add drama. Like,
well, Hamish and Whipper being literally best mates since high school, because that's what they are. Those two were hilarious. The stick that was going on between those two was unreal. So there was a lot of laughing around what was going on, and the Whipper was trying to do everything under his possible banner to not do any work, and the whole thing of
like, oh, Lego's here, and you're like, I don't know what you're doing.
So there was nothing artificial. There was nothing, and that's the thing about Lego Masters, whether it's celebrity or real, there's nothing artificial in any of it. It's we call it WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get.
Because you could never script that sort of stuff.
I don't think so. And it's been like, it's easy to add drama on a reality show, and we've been fortunate enough with Lego Masters, besides a select few that unfortunately it happens, like, not getting along with each other on the show. But I think we've been fortunate where everyone's kind of gotten along.
Well, there's obvious human nature comes into play, where if you put 16 strangers together, of course there's going to be a couple of people that don't get along. But it's about at what level. And so, as a rule, 99.9% of everyone's played nice and realised that, hang on a minute, this is only to do, it's for a TV show, so let's all get along as best we can. So we're very fortunate in that regard. We're very lucky. And you know what? Even when things haven't gone well, it's about how well you bounce back and how well you can adapt and roll with the punches.
Yeah.
And certainly the people that perhaps I've bonded with the most post Lego Masters airing are people that have that resilience. And that's pretty important.
So before we wrap things up for the end of the podcast, is there anything you can tell us about season 4?
I can let you in on a few things. Obviously, it's the hardest.
Wow.
It's by far and away that. And what do I mean by the hardest? The challenges that we set, there's some crazy things.
I'm excited.
Like some really bonkers things. And, as the trailers come out, you'll start to get to some glimpses of those. They're by far, and even things like the time crunch that we put people under.
Yeah.
Things like that. So the things that you know what? everyone who watches the show, and you guys are avid fans, and thank you, by the way, but as avid fans...
I'm an avid fan of you, Ryan.
Well, your expectations...
Brickman.
Well, your expectations of those contestants have also gone up.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've seen what they're all capable of doing. And so your expectations are, and we're the same. And so to meet that expectations, we've really had to push the contestants harder and harder and harder.
Wow, that's
and
amazing.
So there's that element to it. And of course, Hamish is in full flight.
Yes.
And like
Release the Hamish. It's like, yeah.
But yeah, we appreciate you. I know you're a very busy man, and I know it's hard. I've been bugging you for such a long
Pinning you
time
down.
to get on, and I know
It's been a challenge.
it's been challenge, with obviously everything's
COVID.
going on,
Yeah, all of that.
But we appreciate you spending time with us. I appreciate it,
no problems.
We appreciate the friendship. I know I'm a difficult person sometimes, and I can appreciate that. I'm annoying, so I appreciate
at
you about stuff. Hey, can you do this? Are you doing
That's
this?
okay, no.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Brickman. We appreciate it. We'll put links down to his all shows. He'll release later where the Jurassic World show is going, because we don't want to give anything away, because in case things change with the Jurassic World show, COVID and that stuff. So when I hear from the Brickman team, I'll put links and everything and share all this stuff.
And you'll be able to buy the Brickman Challenge book on our website as
That's
well.
right. Our
Yeah,
website.
well, actually, I can. Do you want a scoop?
Yes.
I know you guys love a
Oh,
scoop.
yeah.
Yes.
So our new book, Bricktionary, is out in at the end of March, and so you can get it here at Rick James Bricks. Of course, you can.
Yes.
And it's a beauty.
I'm excited. You've done really well. Sorry, I know we're about to wrap up, but I have to touch on this. A big thank you. You went out of your way to sign like a lot of copies for us when we first launched the book.
So my hand's still a bit no.
But that's one thing you didn't have to, and we appreciate that obviously. But the Brickman book, out of any Lego related books we stock, and we stock a few obviously, has been the number one seller. Without fault, we get them in, bang, they sell out. It's been such a good
Constant,
thing to
yeah.
have a product that I can say, yeah, I know him, but now we release this and people can believe me that I know you.
Yes.
But now it's it's just been a good thing, I think, for the Brickman brand, because to get yourself out there in so many bookshops, retailers everywhere, it's been amazing. And I'm really looking forward to stocking the next book, because I know it's going to sell well.
That's right.
Yeah, it's different. It's a pretty cool. It's the A to Z of cool Lego things.
Oh, cool.
And so tricks, techniques, builds, ideas, all that kind of
So
stuff.
much content in
I'm
those
pumped.
books.
Yeah, so
Great,
so it's a ripper.
And then obviously Brickman will be releasing more merchandise later, t-shirts and all this sort of stuff. We'll link his website, buy his merch, because do it. He needs you to buy his merch. Thank you so much, Ryan. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thanks,
Everyone,
guys.
Thank you, Rick.